can get to the important part of what Random Designer wants to convey, and that is that God intends for us to have relationship with Him. And that's what's the most important thing. Okay, so let's walk our way through, beginning with messages and goals. We've got just a few more minutes, and then we'll conclude it for today. Messages of Random Designer. First of all, God is real. I already told you the Lynchburg and Wall Street Journal stories from before. I believe that God is real. I don't know that by science. I know that by faith. Second message, God is far more creative than previously understood. It will blow your mind like it does mine. Third point, God's primary desire is to establish relationship with this human creation. And then if we're successful at conveying these messages, the goals I'd like to see, and these aren't all-inclusive, to expose and break down barriers to faith. We are creating some here, and it's time to break them down. Second, to establish a viable framework to enhance Christian credibility. If we are to be salt and light to the world, we must speak with integrity in matters of faith as well as matters of science. And third, encourage intellectual and spiritual development. All right, let's look at the messages of Random Designer. First message of Random Designer, God is real. You may have heard differently than this. You see, because Richard Dawkins, the atheistic evolutionary scientist, says if natural law is all there is, there's no need for God. The bottom line is that we are not going to prove faith with science. We're not going to prove God with science, but neither can we disprove Him. Okay? So nothing in science says otherwise. You're hearing these messages that if evolution and natural law is all there is no God. Science doesn't say that. Science can say that. Scientists can say that. But science doesn't say that. That is not a legitimate conclusion of science. Second point, there is no need to fear or deny science to acknowledge and experience God. The third, which arises from the second, the claim God created is equally plausible as natural law created. Equally plausible. In fact, I'll go one step further. If we say that natural law created, it begs the question, doesn't it? Who then created the natural law? Who wound the whole universe up in just the right way at the beginning so that it would unfold the way it has unfolded? We'll come back and discuss that some more again next time. In reality, Christian faith is not based upon science. It's a mistake to do that. We'll talk about that next time too, because in our education, public policy education debates that are going on right now, this is what's going on. But we'll come back. Second message of Random Designer, God is far more creative than previously known. His methods are subtle. His methods are unexpected and sometimes paradoxical. His methods are inefficient, incredibly inefficient, at least by our standards. 4, his methods are highly underappreciated. We have a tendency to attach value judgments to things, don't we? We need to be careful about that. Because in spite of these things, God's methods are incredibly, and this is the most important thing, they're effective. They work. In fact, as you read Random Designer and see how it's laid out, you'll see that not only is it an effective way, it appears to be the best mechanism for accomplishing the goals of creating life as we see it. Third message of Random Designer. God's desire is relationship with His human creation. That's it. The most important thing that I want to convey in the book. So, is it true that human beings are God's ultimate creation? The Bible seems to indicate that to us, doesn't it? Interestingly enough, it looks like science is telling us the same story. I sort of developed that all the way through the book, but sort of hit it on the head right at the end in chapter 24, the next to the last chapter, the ultimate creation. Even the genetics is suggesting that we may have been the goal from the very beginning. I don't know about you, but that speaks to me. So what is it about human beings that makes them so special? Scientists think it's self-awareness. And surely we can't deny that that's true. A human being looks in the mirror, and what do we see? We see ourselves, and we recognize that that's ourself. A monkey looks in the mirror, and the monkey sees an adversary and is either angry or frightened. Self-awareness, a key concept of what it means to be a human being. But sometimes I wonder if we're missing something when we define humanity by self-awareness. Is there something more? Maybe even something that science is reticent to really try to investigate very carefully. Do you know any other living creatures on the planet who are God-aware? Seems to be something that's universal and only associated with human beings. Other characteristics, sensitive conscience. Is that God instilled? We have a thirst for a spiritual element. Doesn't matter what race or population or nationality you look at, part of human nature is looking for that relationship and connection with God. And this is an important one. Human beings are special because we are free from the physical constraints of random design. Now, you don't quite know what random design is yet, but we'll go into it. But let me just tell you that random design is a creative process that works only in the physical. We will see that random design has brought forth the spiritual element, and from that we have this ability to connect with God. But random design is a purely physical phenomenon. Human beings are different in that we seem to have risen above the laws of random design, survival of the fittest, and selfishness. Human beings are the only ones on the planet that we can discern who have that characteristic of being able to choose our destiny instead of just letting natural law dictate it. And from this element of choice, we have, I guess in my view, one of the most distinctive characteristics and gifts that human beings have been given. We can choose. Finally, a sense of purpose and meaning from which rich relationships become possible, both with each other and also with God. And so when you see the subtitle of Random Designer, it says, "Created from Chaos to Connect with the Creator." Well, a pastor this summer nailed me on that when he said, "What's this with chaos?" And I said, yeah, it was the alliteration I was after. Created from randomness to connect with the Creator. But you see, as we begin to unfold this thing, it's created for a purpose. There's a purpose within the randomness. Okay, as we tie things up here for today, I want to talk to you just briefly about random design. And we're going to lay out 3 main points that we'll address, and then we'll actually address part of the first point, and then we'll sort of conclude our session here today. Okay, what is random design? That's one of the first question we'll discuss. The second one is this concept of God being a random designer. That just doesn't quite fit, does it? Just makes you feel a little bit queasy and uneasy. There's more to it than that. We'll address that in our next session. And then the third thing, what is the value of random design as a creation process and also as a creative strategy, as God's tool of creating life on earth? So let's look at what is random design, number 1, and that will be all that we will do today. Okay, what is random design? The laws of randomness drive all life. Have any of you ever heard of the second law of thermodynamics? The second law of thermodynamics